What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. What's up, everybody? This is episode 29 of the Esports Narrative, and my guest tonight is Jonathan Gazer Tavares. He is at Circa Gazer. He is the COO of Circa Esports. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm very excited. It's been about a month since I knew I was coming on, and I've been ready.
Yeah, awesome. We've been booking people left and right, so I appreciate you taking some time tonight. So tell us a little bit. I'd like to hear your origin story, right? So how did you get into video games? Did you have, video games growing up? Like, what was that like? And tell me how you got into video games in the first place.
Yeah, well, so I started video games back when I was maybe like 5 years old. I would go over to my aunt's house, and she would babysit me and another kid. And he used to have a GameCube and a Nintendo 64 and a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1. We would always used to play like random two-player games. You know what I mean? So nothing too competitive, but just like co-op games and random like 1v1 games. So nothing too serious. But as I got older, I was really into sports games, so like Madden, MLB, NHL, FIFA, those types of games. And then around Black Ops 1, I got Black Ops 1, played with friends from school, was really bad at it. But I then got into NHL, like NHL 12, NHL 13, and I was like really good at that. Yeah. Like super good at that. Like Ultimate Team, and then the EA SHL, which is like, it's turning into like a more of an esports thing now. I see in like Canada, they have like events at DreamHack and stuff where it's like players just go and they play 6v6. And I used to be really good at that. I used to play that. That's how I kind of got my competitive in video games. I've always been competitive, but this is the video game start to it. Basically after that, nice. I would say I went to Call of Duty and started, playing like GBs and 8s and Call of Duty and stuff, and then changed to Counter-Strike, and yeah, that's basically when I got the PC and I started following in terms of like esports, Yeah. I went from esports, like the players and the teams, to like the other side of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what year was that when you started getting into more the Counter-Strike stuff?
Probably like 2 years ago.
Okay.
I would say 2, 3, 2.5.
And how did the Circa opportunity come up? Like, are you original like founder of Circa kind of thing? Like, were you there in the beginning? Like, tell us a little bit of what that's like.
So the people who founded Circa was Mark, the CEO, Mark O, who is currently an owner as well, and Barrick, who's a community manager. They founded it, but I came on much later. So originally I came on as I knew one of the previous owners very well, and he brought me on as a CSGO manager, and I CSGO managed for a couple months, did really good, decent at least. Then got my chance to be a general manager. Did that for a couple months, did very good, and then the opportunity arose, whatever, into being a COO and an owner, and so I took that position, and so that's how basically my time with Circa has gone.
Awesome.
And I sort of worked from a bottom managerial role where I was managing a team to now helping with the whole thing, you know what I mean, being an owner. So
yeah, that's pretty cool. Now I'm always curious on how this kind of works. So like, tell us, are you working, do you like have a full-time job, and are you also doing the Circa thing? What's that like for you?
So right now I'm a full-time student. So nice. I do that. Yeah. And I used to do a part-time job on the side as well. But right now I'm sort of looking for a job in more of my field. So I'm looking for like a internship or something like that in a communications job, but mostly doing school and then Circa as well.
Cool. Now, I'm always really curious about teams and organizations and how they run kind of things, and to what you're comfortable. Like, tell us a little bit about what that's like as far as, how much of the staff or the team is like volunteer and they're kind of doing it for the love of the game kind of thing versus the people that are, making kind of a living doing it, the difference.
So there are very few organizations that people in terms of staff make a living on it, right? There's only like the really premier top esports organizations.
Right.
Every other esports team is sort of, working their way to that. And we, in terms of designers, we like to give them money and compensate them. Same with our social media and marketing, public relations and stuff. That's a very difficult area in terms of esports, and finding somebody that can do a good job. So that is something that's needed for like compensation. We figured out that it's best to compensate them. We tried volunteer, and it really wasn't working out. People wouldn't, put as much effort as we would like. So, we compensate. We have, since we're in fighting, we have, instead of just, one big, tournament, there's like, it's almost every weekend we have a player somewhere. So it's like, it's a lot of work. So if you cover a weekend, we'll compensate you for, stuff like that.
Cool.
Some position, we offer flights. We send them to events and stuff, our certain managers and such like that.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious on what the CEO means, Chief Operating Officer. I'm assuming is what that stands for.
Yep.
Well, what does that look like? What are some of the things you do for people that are, looking to, I think this is helpful for people that are looking to start their own teams. Like, what are some of the things that are important for running a team like this that you need, and what are some of the things that you take care of?
So in theory, the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, is sort of the head man, right? He's the one who makes the shots, who calls the shots, right? So the COO would be, this is like a regular standard company organization, not really esports, but the COO rather, would be the guy who sort of manages everybody below that, that number. So the general manager, the marketing team, everything like that. So he basically, the CEO has a game plan, and then the COO is sort of the person that makes everything work, and it says it in their operations, you know what I mean? So I got to make sure that everything runs smoothly and stuff like that. In terms of esports, it's basically the same thing. It's sort of like a team effort in esports though, where every department does the same thing. Every department is a little specialized towards it a little bit, like marketing is specialized towards marketing, whereas the general manager is targeting and going after talent acquisitions and stuff like that. So, but it's mostly a teamwork. We all do the same. We all look for players. We all look for teams to pick up. We all look for everything like that. So it's mostly a teamwork. But in theory, I just got to make sure everything's running smooth in the company.
Now, what's the hardest part about that?
There's a lot of things that could go wrong. There's a lot of people you have to keep out for. There's arguments that go on. Like I said, we're a family, Circa, and families have fights, and there's conflicts. There's conflict of interest, and everybody, one little thing in a text chat could spiral off. So it's keeping everybody at the right mindset. I think it's the biggest difficulty that I've seen and have had.
Yeah. Now, changing gears a little bit, I'd like to hear from your perspective a little bit about the current state of esports. So what is the narrative of the current state of esports right now?
So a lot of people, and I'm in the same belief, they're saying the bubble is going to pop. And this is like, obviously everyone's seeing the big investors come in. And these investors are putting a lot of money in. They're not getting a huge return. There's not much of a return right now, if any, in esports. And these investors, they're putting so much money in, and they're not seeing a big enough or really any return yet. And so I think esports can go one of two ways. It could blow up and be what everybody predicts it to be, and be on TV almost, could be like a hockey. It could be like it's like an MLS right now. You know what I mean? How the viewers are, except it's online, not on TV. So I think if it hits TV, it's probably going to be around the same viewer base as MLS, Major League Soccer. Or it could go the other way, and it could pop, and a lot of these investors could be leaving the scene, and a lot of these investors are going to see such a loss, and the other investors to come are going to get scared. A personal opinion, and that has more to do with me, is these investors, they're putting in so much money into these organizations that have so much money. You know what I mean? So you're seeing Envious get so many investors, Optic, all these organizations, Immortals, so many multi, 8-figure, $1 million deals, and these investors, they're probably not going to see much of that in return. So I think if I was an investor, I mean, it's sort of like that risk reward type of thing. If you invest in a mediocre organization, there's a chance that they can use that money and do well with it. So I guess to sum it all up, esports is in a interesting spot where it could blow up or it could just as easily, crumble. So
Yeah.
a lot of words for a simple answer.
No, yeah, I tend to agree. And, I talked to Stephen Hayes, who's the managing partner of Deep Space Ventures a few episodes ago. And, he's a VC. He was an iBanker, and he came into the tech and esports and SaaS world. And he kind of had the same sentiments on the episode, was that these VCs are looking for a certain amount of return, and they aren't going to see the 20x return that they'd like. So investing in esports teams is more better suited for like the angel investors or the family investor type things. And then the tech companies like, the tech startups, like the platforms or like the services, those have more, I guess, room for growth or potential for growth and a better return. But yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, the teams themselves, like you said, you could invest in a team and then they take off, or it could just, it
fall.
Could be, yeah, exactly.
I think a big controversial thing and a thing that I'm skeptical on is, I guess, franchising has sort of popped in and sort of is now making its way in through, League of Legends, Overwatch. I'm hearing things about like Call of Duty maybe trying to do it. I'm hearing things about Counter-Strike even in the, distance trying to do something like that.
What does that mean? What does that mean for smaller teams like you guys? Like, obviously, you don't have these big investors backing you and stuff like that. And for these franchises, a lot of them are really expensive to get into. So what does that mean for like the smaller groups?
Well, so this is something that I don't think the smaller organizations really talk about amongst themselves, but this is something that I've thought about. I see it, and I see the OWL rather doing this. I think they already have something like this where it's like a challenger league.
Right.
So like in baseball, they have AAA and AA and single A. And, the NFL, they have the Canadian Football League and whatever, so on. And I think that is where these organizations, that's where these leagues and these franchising, that's where they're going. I think, we're not going to be, and we don't have the investors to be a major league team. So maybe if we, work our way to being a AA team or a AAA team, that would be the best. That would be the best way to describe, I guess, where we're at right now in terms of mindset and how I feel like how our place in esports will be towards the future.
Yeah, and I kind of liken it to paintball. If anyone is familiar with paintball, it's struggled over the years in popularity, right? I mean, when you talk to someone who plays competitive paintball, you probably don't hear a lot about them being a professional at it. There's very few professionals at paintball, but on the other hand, there is a huge competitive scene for it. I mean, you go to your local paintball park, there's people playing speedball and they're trying to be competitive at it and stuff like that. So I think over time, it's going to be one of those cases where there's going to be a few relatively, in terms of people, professional leagues and things like that. And there's going to be far more amateur or semi-professional leagues just by the nature of how things are going and the amount of people that are involved.
Right. And if there's a growing, if there's like if people start watching sort of, I'm very familiar with baseball, so I'm going to continue to use that analogy. Yeah. If people are watching, there's going to be the 500,000 viewers watching, Major League esports. But if there's still a good amount of viewers watching that step below them, that AAA level, that not so Premier League, then I still think the prize pools and I still think the sponsors coming in there are still going to be rather huge, rather big. Maybe not huge, but if the Challenger League is getting very good numbers still, the prize pool is still going to be somewhat large. You're just not going to be that. I guess you're not going to be that noticed in terms of that next level. You know what I mean? You're not going to be known as the big organization. You're going to be known as that little bit lesser. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Now, what are the reasons people fail to succeed with their organization or their team? I know it might be too early to to speak as to, based on what you're doing and stuff like that, because things are still young and stuff like that. I totally get. But from your perspective, like, what are the things you're looking out for as the reasons why teams or organizations fail to succeed in this?
I've seen a lot on Twitter recently and over the summer about, I guess, owners putting a twit longer together and complaining about how they don't have the finances to keep up with these investors. And so it's sort of money. It's like a bunch of things into one. It's money, the will, the heart, and really just the time. If you don't have time, you can't do it. If you don't have the passion or the will to do something, you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? You're not going to spend hours and hours and hours and thousands of your money into it. You know what I mean? So I think it has a combination of those things. So, money, will, passion, and time.
Yeah. What's been one of the biggest accomplishments for you so far?
Something that I think personally, because I'm Counter-Strike kind of guy, at least I think so. Was when we had a team Counter-Strike, and these guys, we picked them up, and 4 out of the 5 players turned out to be in Premier. I don't know if you know anything about ESEA, but they're all in Premier now. So basically, we picked that team, and it's unfortunate that they couldn't be in Premier together, but they all separated, and they the team fell apart, and they all went to Premier together. So in theory, that team would have if they didn't have internal issues, they would have gone to Premier and maybe even cracked a low level pro spot, because the lower pro leagues are pretty poor right now in North America. So that's probably one of my biggest goals, or accomplishments rather. But I think the biggest one has to be like working my way up from Circa, starting at that CSGO manager to now being an owner. So yeah, that's probably my biggest accomplishment though.
Yeah. Now, talking about CSGO, I'm a huge CSGO fan. I've been a big fan of Counter-Strike since the 1.6 days, when complexity was dominant. I was a huge fan of complexity back in the day when, there was they were the top NA team and arguably one of the best in the world. They were dominant. What do you think the issue is with North American CS? Like, obviously, Liquid did really good this last event in New York. But, aside from that, it's like, it seems very hot and cold for NACS. Like, what do you think might be some of the causes, and what do you think we need as like North American CS to compete with, the Europeans and Brazilians and things like that?
Well, I actually told a buddy of mine, when Liquid was making that run to the finals, I said, yeah, they're not going to beat FaZe, but regardless of that, they're still not a top team, in my opinion. Yes, they made the finals. Yes, they beat these good, SK, and I believe they beat Navi, I believe, VP. I don't know. Well, I think that's what they did, but I can't remember. But I think that they're, like you said, they're hot and cold. You know what I mean? And the biggest thing, in my opinion, the reason is just they don't know that mindset. They don't know how to take that mindset and put it in the right way. They're getting paid all this money. They're overpaid. North America. They don't have the practice mentality. I think we saw it in Vision, where the Optic guys, the new team they have, the CSGO team, they come from Europe after these long flights, and the first thing they do is they want to scrim. And that shows you the difference between North America and Europe. These guys just uprooted their lives to come to North America to play in a league. All right, where they easily could have just took a season off and then qualified for Pro League in Europe, but they decided to stay here, and they came here and did that. Whereas if you look at NA Counter-Strike, when Optic had that previous team, they got a house for him, and one dude stayed in that house. And that dude and that's Mixwell, and he was thinking about going back because nobody else was there with him. Nobody else was trying to put in the same time. So I think the biggest problem is the devotion to want to play Counter-Strike. Another big problem with it is North America, the players, they don't play smart, in quotations. They don't play a right type of Counter-Strike. They play more individual based, and it's all about me. Whereas, every player in North America, when they come up, they want to be the star. And that is a big problem, because not every player can be the star. It's not always the most important player on a team is a star. I remember that old Fnatic that went on that crazy run. In my opinion, the most important player on that team was Crims. because he was such a good support player, and it's like, Cloud9, they have this really talented roster, and same with Liquid, but who's the support player on that team? They don't have one. They're forcing these super talented players to move back into support role. Like Automatic, I think, for Cloud9 is going to be their new support, and that dude is super talented. He should be one of their main stars, and he's not. He's not going to be able to. He's going to have to be put on a level backwards. And I believe you asked, what do I think it's going to take for NA to be back at the top?
Yeah.
I have always been a big fan of Dazed, the iBuyPower, and obviously Swag. I think that is, if they get, I think they're going to do big things now, but if they get unbanned from majors, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon, but if they do, that's going to open possibilities for them to team with other really talented players. And I think that's the team that North America wants, or needs, rather. Because I think their team right now is good, but they still need a few better players that they can pick up. So I think maybe, if they get unbanned from majors and they get like a Stewie 2K somehow, that team would be filthy.
How much do you...
Top two. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, how much do you think the mentality goes back to, like North American players having it good or easy, and just, Europeans, it's kind of like the immigrant mentality, right? Like people who immigrate to America, they've had it rough, right? Like they haven't had an easy life. They've had to sacrifice so much, and they're just so hungry. Whereas in North America, it's been good. Life's been good.
Right.
Everyone's upbringing relatively has been pretty good. So they don't have to work as hard,
Right, and it's basically the same thing. I mean, in North American Counter-Strike, players are getting $500 a month to be in the bottom half of Premier, to be winning 3 games in Premier. There's pros that are getting $5,000 a month to play 2 tournaments a year. I mean, there's really no reason that these players should be getting paid this much money for not doing anything. So they're when it's sort of like the aspect in real sports as well, where once players get these big contracts, what happens? They sort of slow it down. You know what I mean? They don't work as hard because they have that guaranteed money, and that's a big problem. That's been one of the problems for people who, Shroud. People say that he's got that problem. Tarek as well. People say he's got that problem. So I think they don't have that need to be. You know what I mean? Like they don't have the need to strive, I guess, because at the end of the day, you can be a top team in North America by being, there's 4 teams that can legitimately have a chance to be the best. And if you're on one of those 4 teams, then what is there to work for? Because at any time you can be the best in North America, and they don't really see fit to work that extra bit to go and win a major. So I don't know. I guess Liquid has the heart to do it, but they just don't have the consistency. So
yeah, and I think that a lot of people can use their popularity or their fame, even if they're not a top team in the world. They're still pretty popular as far as popular fame goes, and celebrity status in the community. So they can use that, like Shroud, to stream and make a really significant income. So then maybe there's a sense of, well, I don't need to work so hard because I can stream and I can make this amazing living. Like, why go through the stress and rigors of competitive gaming when I could just, shoot the shit and play video games all day and, just have fun. And
right now, I think Shroud, after retiring, he's probably tripling his income per month.
Oh, yeah. I always see him. He's got like 40K viewers.
And he's got like 30K subs. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like he's always had good viewership, but I can't give you an answer on why that viewership stepped up.
I was just going to ask you that. Like, what is that? What is the X factor? Like, why does he have 40K? Like, what is the reason why he's got such a huge viewer base right now?
I guess the only answer that I have is that he's really skilled. I mean, well, there's multiple things to it. He's got that really laid back personality that I think is really good for streamers. I think there's multiple personalities that people like on stream, and it's like one's super energetic and like super crazy, and the other one is super laid back, super calm. Summit 1G and Lyric. You know what I mean? Like super chill.
Right.
And he's just super talented at anything he plays in terms of PC. You know what I mean? CS:GO, PUBG.
Yep.
He plays random games and he still does unbelievable. So
So my next question is kind of in parallel to that, and it's as it relates to organizations. What is the attractiveness, or what are the reasons why teams or organizations are recruiting streamers, and like what is the value exchange there between the streamer and the team?
So for streamers to pick up, or for teams to pick up streamers, the biggest thing is, I guess, for their numbers. Having a streamer with those extra numbers is huge. You don't even, at this point, you don't need your team to stream your actual esports players, because you have people to do that already. So that's one thing off of a players list, because players, if they're not that talented, you want them to stream. But if you have streamers, then have them focus on their, on their game. Another thing is outreach. A streamer can reach a lot of other different target audience. People who don't really want the esports play, you know what I mean? People who just want to see people open cases up on stream, or troll a little bit, right? You're not really going to see that. If you watch an esports player stream, you're going to see him try his butt off to win. Whereas a guy who's playing casual, he's going to want to win, but I mean he's here to entertain you.
Do you think
so? I guess it's that entertainment factor.
Do you think that that's like kind of the future model for teams? Because there are teams or organizations that they have streamers, but they don't have the amount of streamers that some of these lesser known organizations have, or less funded teams have. Do you think that's a future model that could help these smaller teams?
It's tough having somebody who is. It's sort of weird how it works. Popular streamers don't want to join lesser organizations because they want the organization to help them grow even more.
Sure.
But big organizations don't want smaller streamers because they want the streamers to help them grow. Right. So it's kind of leaves you at this like, okay, well now what do you do? And that's why there's so many streamers with the mid-tier view level not having any teams or anything. You know what I mean? Because they don't want to join a lesser org, and nobody bigger wants to pick them up. So the two type of streamers that have organizations behind them are either big streamers with big organizations, or super tiny streamers with super tiny orgs. And that's like, you're never going to see a middle ground there. So I don't think it's going to grow unless teams start, like mid-tier organizations start giving like a lot of stuff towards product, and maybe even money to these streamers. You know what I mean? So at the mid-tier level. So right. I don't know. It's really hard to right now with esports and the organizations. It's super difficult to really judge that, just because everyone's sort of focused on picking up teams. So I don't know. It's tough. I think that there's definitely a chance that streamers can start taking over or esports. I think so. There's definitely a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if, like you said, it's outreach, it's kind of brand awareness. It's somebody else that represents you, that's entertaining and funny. And if you associate it with your team, then you're like, oh, who are these guys? And you look around and you see that there's like 5 or 8 or 15 people from the same team kind of streaming. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I get that. I get the sense of awareness, like brand awareness and outreach and exposure that you can get, because if you don't have any streamers, you only have the tournaments you play in and the individual players themselves. Right. If you can reach a few thousand or 10, 20,000 people just by having, a couple streamers, and that can increase the exposure to your brand. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that it's for that to really blow up in terms of esports teams having streamers, is mid-tier organizations picking up mid-tier streamers via giving them money or giving them some sort of something to drive them to stream for them. You know what I mean?
It's just funny, right? Because like I feel like on Twitter, it's like every day, like I joined X, I joined Y, and it's like super excited, I joined X, or whatever it is, and I'm like, what is the attraction there? Like I'm trying to figure out like what the exchange is, and then like I guess it's if like you said, a cool or a popular team, is like, hey, looking for people to for streamers to join, and you perceived as kind of a cool organization, or you do cool stuff, or you have really popular YouTubers on your team and stuff like that. You can kind of get some exposure that way, I guess, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
steal some audience, so to speak.
Right. It's just picking up a streamer it's not a one-way thing. It's not like picking up a player, whereas that player is going to show up. Like having a really talented player is going to make the org look good. It's not. It's both ways. The streamer you have to help the streamer, and the streamer has to help you. If you have a player, you're gonna go out of your way to help that player succeed, right? And the player really doesn't have to do much except for rep you and have that sort of vibe, and he has to actually show that he likes your organization, right? Whereas a streamer, you have to help him. You have to tweet out a stream, get him viewers, and in return, they have to talk good about you. They have to sort of show that, hey, something we have is like community night, and that has where our streamers go on the Circa Twitch, sorry, Jesus Christ, it's the Circa stream.me, and and they play with a bunch of viewers, and we have our tournament that we do, our Smash tournament, and it's streamed on the Circa stream.me, and there's a bunch of viewers that play and commentate, and so it's fun, and it helps our streamers sort of grow in other ways, and in return they stream for us, and they help get our brand out as we help them get viewers.
So what's it like with stream? It's stream.me, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? And I know that, obviously Twitch is the 500 million pound gorilla in the room, but there are other platforms.
Right.
Microsoft has a platform as well, but what is it like streaming on a different platform?
It's hard to attract streamers that want to put in time on that, because on Twitch, as hard as it is to get viewers on Twitch, it's in a way it's just as hard, or it's sometimes easier on stream.me, because there's not as many streamers on there, so you're bound to get seen by somebody, so you'll get a viewer or two pop in there, more than what you already get. But the problem is there's only a certain amount of outreach that you can get, because there's only so much traffic. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to get streamers to join and want to stream on that platform. So we look for the streamers that are super interested and super enthusiastic about streaming to join there. So that's what it is. It's super difficult, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun growing with the platform. They're trying to make their brand. They're competing against Twitch, and that's such a difficult thing to do. It's like everybody trying to compete against Amazon, right? Amazon is this huge company, and everybody else is like fallen so far behind, right? And that's how it is in the streaming world. You saw MLG.TV try to do it, failed. You saw, you see, I don't even know if Azubi's still around, but you see they try to do it, failed. Hitbox failed. It's so difficult because of the amount of people that click on Twitch every day. It's sort of a habit. They go on, they open their browser, they hit Twitch, and they see it.
Do you worry that you'll get less exposure? Like, do you worry that you're not, being effective when you stream and that kind of thing? Like, is that something that crosses your mind? Like, do you think you should be on Twitch? Like, what is that thought process like?
So I can't get into too much detail, but we are, our fighting players are allowed to stream on Twitch. We do have some players and streamers that are allowed to stream on Twitch. So we let them do it, and this is an agreement obviously we have, so they can do it. But we still, it's tough because in a way it does affect us obviously, but in a way it sort of helps us too. Because when you look at Stream.me, if anybody knows Stream.me, they're going to see who they work with, who Stream.me work with, and there's not many people. Right. So who's who at the top of that list? There's us, and then there's whoever else they work with. There's only max like 5 teams, and I think there's only like 2 other teams that they work with. So it's like, yes, it definitely affects us in certain ways, but at the same time, it helps us because if anybody who clicks Stream.me, they're going to see us. So whereas on Twitch, the chances are very, much slimmer to see us. So
right, it's like, there's millions of people streaming on Twitch, and it's just so much noise that you could go way more unnoticed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
what's the best advice someone's ever given you so far in your journey through life?
Through life, shoot. I guess it's sort of morbid. Don't trust anybody. And I think that keys into esports a lot, because a lot of people are a little scummy in esports, and you gotta see who you can really trust. And so it's not the best thing to not trust anybody, but it's good to not give everybody full trust. So a lot of people in esports like to talk. And so if you have that little bit of reserve, it's a lot better.
How do you weed that out? Like, how do you get your BS radar up?
What people say and what they do. A lot of people like to talk, and they don't like to do the walk, I guess. And it takes time, and you see this guy says, hey, this is happening here, this is what's going on, you can get this and this, but nothing happens. It's 3 months later, nothing happens. Okay, well, X marked that guy, not going to trust him again. Okay, this guy tells me this. 3 months later, it doesn't happen. X marks that guy. This guy tells me this, it happens. Check mark, I'll keep you later. You know what I mean? Like, I can trust you. Mm-hmm. That type of stuff. So it's basically just learning from the past. Yeah,
that's really good advice. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
I think they need the same thing that could possibly kill them: investors and the TV opportunities. Because going on TV, it can either get really good exposure and blow up, or they don't get that many viewers, and TVs and ESPN and the E-League, they're going to be like, no, we don't want to do this again. So the same thing with investors. They put their money and they don't get anything back. They're not going to want to do it again. Whereas if they get it back, then other people are going to start investing. So you know what I mean? So it's sort of like, it's either going to kill us or make us stronger.
How do you feel about like the Facebook deal with ESL, with YouTube, maybe potentially Netflix and Amazon, the major over-the-top, video TV platforms? What do you think about partnering with those as opposed to like traditional TV?
In a lesser scale, it's sort of like what we did. We partnered with Stream.me, which is a little bit of they get less audience than Twitch, right? And it's sort of like Facebook. Yes, Facebook is obviously huge, and we're talking about upper scale, but theoretically, you're supposed to get more viewers on TV than you are on Facebook. So it's like, it's tough, because a lot of people are going to click Facebook, and if you advertise it correctly, then a lot of people are going to be able to see it. So I think Facebook could work. I don't know how it would. I don't know the logistics, how it would work.
Because Facebook has the new Facebook Watch,
right?
And they're producing original content on there. Micro has like a little TV series on there. There's a lot of different things on there. So I'm thinking that Facebook's play is to become traditional TV, quote unquote. So it would kind of make sense that if all the eyeballs are there, the attention there, people are there, that esports would potentially go there as well. At least the major events and things like that.
Right. It would be a difficult. I mean, theoretically, TV would get you the more viewers, but like you said, I mean, with Netflix growing and Amazon Video and YouTube being so popular, having it on there, it's sort of like it's a risk. It's a low risk, I guess, but there's definitely a lot of reward to it, because it could blow up, and esports could be the front runner of Facebook. What was it, Facebook Live or Facebook Watch? So it could work very well, but people might not be too interested in it. Because I know that a lot of people who still use Facebook are a little bit older, and maybe they wouldn't be too interested in it.
Yeah.
So maybe that would, veer them off a little bit. But
I personally think, because ESL is starting to experiment with this, DreamHack has done a little bit. I think that it's very early, but from what I've seen, Facebook Watch has the potential to disrupt TV, like traditional cable TV, more so.
Netflix did, yep.
Yeah, to do exactly what Netflix did. And if they get the right producers or they get the right content on there, all it takes, like with Netflix, like House of Cards, huge. Just completely changed the game for Netflix. Netflix was already huge and it was a huge disruptor, but when they produced original content, like that was it. That was it. That was a game changer. So I think it'll be kind of the same thing. I don't know if necessarily esports will be the thing that does that, but it'll be something that shifts to Facebook's favor, and then everyone's going to want to be there, including, you know, esports and stuff like that. And I think Amazon, or I think Twitch is going. They already have, right? They have Power Rangers on there every so often. They've got, you know, their IRL content. So they're kind of toe dipping into that stuff. And I think it's going to be interesting to see in the next 3 to 5 years or 2 to 3 years what kind of content, additional content they allow to be produced or produce themselves on those platforms.
I think there needs to be, you know, I think that could help with esports and the Facebook thing is if there was more video game esport shows, because I think that could definitely do some cool stuff. Because I know there's a show being created right now, but I think I read an article somewhere that there was no esports players or esports, like anybody that knows anything in terms of like you know, people that are in the know about esports are connected to that show, to that movie, and it's sort of just people on the outside looking into esports and how they see it. And I think if you get somebody who knows esports and can make a show about it, and you know, even if it's like a day-to-day life of an esports team, and show people that these esports players are truly like sports players and that they do their life is play, practice, then I think that could do a lot on Facebook.
Yeah,
that could help.
I have seen some teams like venturing down that path a little bit. You know, some of the bigger teams that have production companies like inside of them, like Liquid and things like that. I have seen like mini documentaries and things like that. But I think you're right. I think if we can produce some funny, witty, serious drama, action, like the typical type of shows you would watch on Netflix and Amazon and stuff, if we could produce some of that stuff for video games, I think you're right. I think it could bring more eyeballs to people that aren't hardcore gamers.
Right. I think that would be huge.
What's the best play you've seen in any game, or the most memorable moment for you in esports?
I think one probably comes from myself when I played a Counter-Strike LAN. It's probably not the biggest one, but it was pretty hype. My teammate was in like a 1v2 or something, and this was like, I think we were losing the game 15-14, and this was like semifinals of LAN or something, and he clutched it, and the guy was hopping on the bomb. He shot that guy off the bomb. He had like 2 HP. He hid, and the guy was sitting on the bomb, and our whole team, including myself, were yelling, "He's sticking it! He's sticking it!" And he doesn't move, and I'm just like, "Oh no, we're gonna lose!" And then he peeks out a little bit, and the dude's rushing him, and he gets the free kill, and it was so hype. We went on to win that and make it to the finals or whatever, and that was just crazy, just because it was me, you know what I mean? And I had such a personal connection to it. That I was playing and stuff. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Cold Zero moment on Mirage at the major. Shoot, I don't know. I think the biggest thing though had to be Optic at X Games, where Proofy got a 4-piece or something against EG. I think that's probably the biggest thing, because that was just so hype. And even if you're not an Optic fan or a Call of Duty fan, it was crazy, because it was like X Games, the first X Games to enter esports, and it was like super cool. And then he just did that, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like a crazy Call of Duty moment from like 4 years ago. But yeah.
What's your advice for someone who is really passionate about gaming? They see themselves doing something in esports, whether it's helping out a team or graphic design or doing photo, video, or being even a player or a streamer. Like, what's your advice for someone looking to get more into this industry and get known and, you know, do some stuff?
Work hard and do not expect results or anything in return instantly. Esports is it's a growing industry, but return of investment, and time is an investment, is very scarce. So if you're putting in 1,000 hours into esports as a designer or as a manager, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get anything in return for that. You know what I mean? You have to put in so much effort. So just work hard and just have a good mindset. I think that's the biggest advice that I can give to anybody.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that not expecting anything in return part, because I feel like a lot of particularly younger people who are coming up in the scene, they are, they get really good at a game, right? And they just expect people to pick them up and pay them these huge salaries. And it's like, you are good at a game, but you haven't proven yourself as like a player, as a teammate, or anything like that. Like, you have to prove yourself. You have to have some sort of track record of success before you can start demanding, huge salaries and all these things that you're expecting. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I've been perceiving too, is like, there's a lot of people that are trying to do things or giving things with big expectation in return.
And it's not just esports, and it's just not the younger, it's our generation, and I'm taking this PR class, and our professor who's done, a lot of previous like high powered, media jobs, he basically told us our generation, we want return very quickly. We don't want to put a lot of work in, and we want a big return quickly. And it's such a problem, in my opinion, especially with esports, since the return of it is even more difficult in esports than in the real world, just because in esports things are so much like it's a dime and a dozen. You know what I mean? You're not, the chances of if you're a player, the chances of you being a pro are super slim. You know what I mean? And it's like the chances of you being a manager on a top organization, they're super slim. You can't just go on Twitter, create a Twitter, make an organization, pick up, a Call of Duty team or something, or a CSGO team, and be like, okay, I'm going to go apply to, Liquid, or I'm going to go apply to be this, manager here. It's just not going to work. Or you can't apply to anybody and be like, hey, I want to get paid. It's just not going to work. You got to put a lot of time into it. You got to put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, we're a world of instant gratification, and I even see it not even just among the 18 to 20s, 15 to 18 to 25 to 30-year-olds. Like, I see this with older people as well. Like, I see this with some of my coworkers and colleagues and stuff like that, and they're 40s and 50s and 60s. It's like, it's not just the quote-unquote millennials, to a large extent.
It's modern day. Yeah, it's just modern day people. You need to look up something, directions or something. What do? You don't get a map out. You look on your iPhone or your Android, and you look up, how do I get to here? You want to go eat something. You got 10 minutes. You don't make a sandwich. You look up, where's the nearest fast food place? That's just how, I guess, our life has been, evolved into with how easy everything is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, closing wisdom for anyone who's listening, from a team aspect or player aspect, or just general closing wisdom about esports and video games.
So basically, more of what I've previously said is just work really hard. I saw a tweet from one of my close friends, and he said, if you're not getting paid in esports, you got to make sure what you're doing is what you have a passion for. Because if you don't have a passion for it and you're not getting paid, you're going to get bored of it. You're going to lose the drive. You're going to lose the mentality that you need to succeed. If you're not receiving a bonus or anything for doing all this work, you're going to get tired of it, and you're not going to do it any longer. If you don't have a passion, a will to do something, you're going to fail, and you're not going to want to do it anymore. So that's the biggest thing. Make sure you want to do it. Don't waste your time if you don't want to do it. If you don't want to go through the bad times and through the good times, you can't expect all ups. There's always going to be downs. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not just one down. It's your player does bad in one tournament, and then the next, and then finally he starts doing. You know what I mean? It's just there's so many lows before you get to your high. So just expect that and be ready for it, and have passion for what you do.
Awesome. Super good advice. Well, Jonathan, it has been super fun. I think this has been a really great conversation, and I really want to just thank you again for coming on the show and spreading some wisdom and sharing your thoughts and perspectives on esports and sharing your esports narrative with everyone. And I just really appreciate it. I wish you all the best with Circa and everything that you're doing, and just really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
this was one of my first times on a podcast type of thing, and it was awesome. We had a great conversation. We got to hit out the views on esports and on gaming in general, and it was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Hey guys, real quick before you go, I just want to say thanks for listening and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me that you like it, and I hope that if you found some value from this podcast, that you'll share it on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, anywhere that you have a social media presence. I would love it if you would just share it with 3 to 4 people that might be interested in it. It would absolutely mean the world to me. It would help me get my name out there, help me get the podcast out there. I do this solely for the love of esports and for the love of getting to know people and hearing the stories of esports that I think are so awesome. So please, if you got value from this, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think might like it. And with that, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. 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 I really appreciate